Although all turbojets follow the same basic principle, that of compressing air, heating it, and using the resulting high velocity exhaust to drive it forward, the compression of the air can actually be achieved by two different techniques. Early turbojet engines, such as this one here, used a device at the front rather similar to a supercharger that flings the air out radially in order to compress it. It's rather simple, but it's not very efficient because the air in going through the engine has to go through several changes of direction. The alternative is to use rows of fan blades, such as we have here, mounted on an axial shaft. This is more efficient, but it is, however, much more complicated to make, requiring more sophisticated materials and technologies. Now, this engine here is the Rolls-Royce Avon, which in fact was the company's first production axial flow turbojet. Since 1943, Rolls-Royce had been producing turbojets based on Frank Whittle's original centrifugal designs at its Bonolswick factory in Lancashire, under the leadership of Stanley Hooker, Rolls's former head of supercharger development and a centrifugal compressor enthusiast. But as the war drew to a close in 1945, Hooker was asked to take on the development of an axial flow jet that had been designed at the Rolls-Royce works in Derby. Originally known as the AJ65, where AJ stood for axial jet and 65 was the proposed output in hundreds of pounds of thrust, the engine presented the Bonolswick team with multiple challenges in trying to achieve its design objectives. By 1947, these challenges had still not been overcome, so Ernest Hives, Rolls's head of aero engines, handed the AJ65 project back to Derby. Stanley Hooker left the company shortly afterwards to join one of its main competitors, Bristol Aero Engines, as chief designer. In Derby, the various problems with the AJ65 were gradually resolved, and in August 1948, the first flight test engine, by then given the name Avon, took to the air in a converted Avro Lancastrian. It went into production in 1950 at its design thrust and first entered service in the English Electric Canberra bomber. A modified version with considerably greater thrust was then developed for the Vickers Valiant V bomber that was designed and built at Brooklands. In spite of its early problems, the Avon was a considerable success, with more than 11,000 eventually built and powering such significant aircraft as the Hawker Hunter fighter and the de Havilland Comet IV airliner.